Hello and welcome to this video. In this episode we're going to add navigation to the shopping list. So when you're pressing on one of these list items, we're gonna go to a specific view that will show us the caret and the amount of caret, and this can be applied to so much more in the future if you have more information about the carets, or if this will just be Monday's shopping list or Tuesdays, etc. But first off, we are going to clean up the code a bit. So I'm just gonna make a new package here called screens, and I'm going to create a Kotlin class, and I'm gonna call this the main screen, like so. And this is gonna be pretty simple. Gonna make it a composable fun main screen, like so. And we're pretty much just gonna put in all of these stuff we already have in here. So let's copy. We already have a main screen function, so we could start off by just taking that, doing so. Then we go in here, we take the shopping list and the input, like so. Copy this in here as well, like so. Can remove these imports, import here, and that's pretty much it. Just to have it a bit more cleaner in the main activity here. Remove some spaces. And then we're gonna go to our build Gradle, and we're gonna import the navigation library that we're gonna use. And I'm gonna copy paste it here from my other project. So it's going to be androidx.navigation, navigation compose, and we're gonna create a variable for it. Let's see where we have put the variables here. And we are gonna call this compose UI version. So compose UI version, and we are going to use version 2.5.3, and we sync that. And then let's see. Made a mistake here. It's going to be nav version. Of course, check the wrong thing, so like that. Sync it. And then we're going to create a new screen here, and it's going to be a Kotlin file, and I'm just gonna name this item screen. Make it a composable. Name it item screen, like so. And we're going to take in our shopping view model here as well. Shopping view model. We're going to take in an item ID, which is going to be a string. And we're also now going to take in a nav controller, but this one we can wait a bit with, like so. And we're going to have a scaffold like the main screen has. And we are going to create a, we're going to have a top bar. So this top bar is going to be a top app bar, just like before. We are going to have a title, and it's going to be a text. To import this here. This text is going to be I'm just gonna name it item view title, something like that. Let's see. What is it not liking here? I'm going to remove this, so. And this, it's going to have something more than just a title. So we're going to have a navigation icon. And we only want to create this icon. So this icon is going to be the back arrow to go back to the main screen, but we should have some kind of check that what if we are on a screen where you can't go back. So we're going to write an if statement here. So if the nav controller doesn't have any backstack entries, so if we haven't navigated from anywhere, then we don't want to have an arrow here. So we just write if it's null, like so. And then I have an if statement here. We just don't do anything. But if it's not null, we are going to create a icon button. And here we wanna use our nav controller. And we wanna navigate up. So it just means we go back one step, which will be from the item view to the main view, because that's the only navigation we're going to have. And inside this icon button, we just want to have an icon, and I'm just going to have an image vector, and it's just going to be icons filled and arrow back, like so, back arrow. Let's clean this up a bit. So if we are if we have navigated to this view, we're going to have an arrow making us able to go back. But if we don't have, if you haven't navigated here, if we start on this page, for example, there's not going to be an arrow button to navigate back to. So that's pretty much the gist of it. And then we are going to write our content here. And I'm just gonna have a text here saying item for now. Later on we're going to add some more specific data to this. And then we're going to make a new library, or I mean a package here, and I'm just going to in this navigation. We'll name this. I'm going to create a Kotlin file, and it's going to be navigation as well. And here is where the navigation logic will be for the whole app. So this is a composable, and I will just name it navigation host. And this is going to take in a nav host controller, which is going to control the whole navigation in the app. And here we're also going to take in the shopping view model to send data to the different views. So what do we want in here? Well, we want a nav host, which is going to use this nav host controller. So we're going to just type nav controller equals nav host controller. And the graph we're not going to use, but we're going to use a start destination. And this start destination is going to be just main screen. And then we do this. So yeah, we're going to start on our main screen, and this string is very important, and we should have this in some kind of file to make it more static, so you can't have typos, because it's going to make a big difference. But inside here you write composable, and this is composable views you want to be able to navigate to, and in here you're going to write this route to this composable. And also our main start destination is main screen. This one is going to also be main screen. And what composable do we want in here? Well, we want the main screen, which is going to take a shopping view model instead of the shopping item. So we need to go in and change this. So in here, we're going to write shopping view model. And we are also going to send in the nav host controller. And we're going to make some changes to these click events here, but just bear with it for now. So in the main screen instead, we're going to create the item itself from the shopping view model. So shopping items and you need to, this is a very specific word, by shopping view models dot shopping items dot collect as state, and we want the, if we don't have a value, we want the original state to just be an empty list. So when the view model gets an update for the shopping items, this will update and recompose the view. And that's very important. So we are actually going to create another function here that is going to be composable. It's going to be the main screen, because you want to divide and have as little stuff as possible in each composable to make it easier to preview them and have them as modulable as possible. So in here, we're just going to move this like so, and this is going to take in the shopping items, which is the list of shopping item. It's going to have the add-on item click like we had before, and it's going to take in a shopping item, and it's going to be a unit, and then we're going to write another click function here on navigate to item, and it's going to take in a string. So this click event here is going to help us navigate to the correct view with a string, which is going to be the ID of the name. So now here we call the main screen, and the shopping items is the shopping items. The on, let's make it like this to make it a bit easier to read. The on item click is going to be the same as before. Make it a lambda expression here like so. So we're going to receive a shopping item from the click event, and shopping, I'm going to call the view model dot add shopping item, just like before. And in here we are going to navigate. We're going to get the ID of the item, which is going to be this string here, and we want to use our Navhost controller. So Navhost controller dot navigate, and we're going to write item view backslash, let's see if I can make this, and ID. So this means that we're going to take in an argument in this view, which is going to be the ID of the item. So now we are pretty much done here. We're going to scroll down, and let's see, we're going to add this click event. We need to add this to the shopping list. So down here in the shopping list, we are going to add the click event. So we write on item click shopping item like so. And if we click on this card here, we want to, we already have this here. So when we click on this here, we want to use our function. So on item click dot ID, so on item click, and here we will now put in the it, which is the current item we're clicking on, the ID, and we're just going to, for the sake of it, make it a string. Let's see here what it complains about. Required shopping item. So here I wrote the wrong thing on item click. The autocorrect pranked me. So on item click, the string like so. Gonna clean this up. Now we need to put this in here. So it's going to be shopping list, and on item click, the click event we just added is equal to on navigate to item. So when we click on this item, we're going to send the ID upwards here to the Navhost controller, and this ID here is going to be the ID of the item. So now we are done here, and then we are going to go to the navigation again. So here, shopping, we are going to write, since we remade some stuff here, we're going to write main screen, and we want the one with the view model and the Navhost controller. So put in the view model, we put in the Navhost controller, and that's pretty much it. Then we make another composable, and here we're gonna have the root as item. Let's see, make sure what we wrote here. So in the main screen, we wrote that we're going to navigate to item view, and this is why it's easier to have this as a variable to not mess this up. So item view, and then slash, and you write like this to tell it that we want an argument, and we write item ID. And then going to make it like this. And here we're actually going to use the backstack entry. So I'm gonna make it a variable to make it a bit easier to read. So I'm going to create a variable that's going to be an item ID, and it's the equal to the navigation backstack entry, and if it has any arguments, it's going to have a key. So get string, and the key is item ID. So if you go to the main screen, you can see here we have written that we are sending an argument which is ID. Let's see that I actually wrote ID and not item ID. Like so. Yeah, so here we're going to receive the ID, or in the navigation here, we're going to get the item ID. And if the item ID exists, so if it is anything, we're going to have a string, which is the ID. Then we want to navigate to the item screen, because if we don't have an ID, we don't want to go to that screen. So we're going to write item screen, and we're putting the shopping view model. The item ID is item ID, and the Navhost controller is the Navhost controller, like so. And then if we go to the main activity, we need to make some changes here, because now we're just going into the main screen, but we need to put in the Navhost controller somehow here. So we're going to remove this here, and we're going to write Navhost, and this Navhost here is going to take in a Navhost controller and a graph. But we're not going to use the graph one, we're going to use we're not going to use this Navhost, we're going to use our navigation host. So we're going to use navigation host, which has the Navhost inside it. You could write everything inside the main activity, but I like to divide it up a bit. But we're going to create a val navhost, and this is going to be equal to remember nav controller, like this. So we're going to reuse the same Navhost nav controller for all the views, so it knows where we are and what's going on inside the app. So here we write that the navigation host controller is our Navhost, and the shopping view model is the shopping view model. Here we're going to remove this, and because we're going to get the data from the views instead. And here we're just going to write, let's see, main screen. We can use this here. Let's see, list of empty expression and empty expression, so we can still preview it, because it's pretty nice to have. Now we're going to go into the item screen here, and we're going to use the view model, because now we need to somehow get that item with a specific ID. So I'm going to create a new variable here, val item, and it's going to be a mutable state, so it can mutable state flow, so it can change the value. It's going to be a shopping item, but it might not be. But start value is going to be null. So it's an optional item because if we're not going to have the item straight off when you get to the view, but we're going to make a function here, set item ID, and here we're actually going to take in an integer instead of a string, because if we go to the shopping item, the ID that we're going to use is this here, and it's an integer that increments every time we add an item. And here we're going to use coroutine, so like this, with context just like before. And here we want the shopping, we want to get a shopping item, and it's going to be from the repository, but here we don't have a function to get the item. So if you go into the shopping repository, we will make a suspended function here, suspend function get item from ID, and we're going to take in an ID integer, and we want to receive shopping item, and here we want to return the item from the database. But here we only have to get all items, and this is not what we want. We want a specific item from an ID. So if we go to the shopping DAO, here we need to create a function, and it's going to be a query like before. So what do we want? We want to select from the database, and we want to get a shopping item, and we want it to be, we want to get the shopping item where the ID is equal to our ID. But now we don't have this variable yet, so we're going to create a function get item with the argument, which is the ID, and we want to put back a shopping item. So now we will only get the shopping item which has the ID equal to the ID that we're putting in there. So in here we write get item, we put in the ID like so, and in here we're going to write in the view model that we want to get the item with the ID, and when we get an item we want to change the value of this, so the item value is equal to shopping item, because when this happens, this is going to notify the item screen here that there's a new item when we have added a bit of logic here. So now you can finally write that first we need to set the ID of the item. So we set the ID to the view model equal to the item ID we got as the argument from the main screen, and write just 2 integer to make this a bit easier. And then we create a variable that is the item by the shopping view model dot item dot collect as state, and its initially value is null. And let's see, collect as state. Just need to import this here. So when we set an item here, this is going to be notified that the item in the view model has a new state, and it's going to update and recompose everything here. So in here we're going to make a new text, and this text is going to be equal to the item's name, and I'm going to write it optional here if it has an item. And I also want to write like this, that I want to have the name of the item plus the amount of the item. So like so. I think that's about it. Let's try, see if it works. And it crashed, so let's see what happened. It is crash. So if we scroll up here, see what it says. Main screen is not a direct child of the nav graph. So there's probably something wrong with the name here. We have main screen. As you can see, I have an extra S here. So if this was a variable instead, this would never happen. And that's why it's so dangerous with these roots to have writing these as just loose strings, which is bad. So let's see here now. So if I press, my emulator is bugging a bit, but if I press on pizza, you can see I get to a view that says that in this I had 10 pizzas. So let's try. I want to buy a cow. I want to buy 30 cows. And as you can see, my emulator is a bit messed up right now. But if I press on the cow here, it will say 30 cows. And it seems to be working pretty well. And you can see the back arrow is working. So yeah, that's how you make navigation and put in arguments and can navigate back and forth between the views. And yeah, that's about it for this video. So thank you for watching. Bye bye.